Shalom. So this will be the beginning of a series, hopefully which will enable me to finish the whole book of an English translation and explanation of a book called Sichot, Likrat, HaGiyus of Rav Eli Sadan. Rav Eli Sadan is the Rosh Mechina of the first ever Mechina. The first ever Mechina being Mechinat Eli, or Mostot B'nai David, which is in the place called Eli, with an Ayin. And Rav Eli Sadan, with an Aleph, is the Rosh Mechina there. As a result of him setting up the Mechina, many other Mechinot were set up. Keshet, where I teach, being the third. And as a result of the religious world taking on the Mechina idea and creating it, the secular also took on. This book is a very important book, and it explains basically what's behind going to the army, what's going to encourage us to go to the army, and what can we think about whilst we're going to the army. For those who are considering it, it's a good, considering going to the army, it's a good book to read, as it helps explain and convince us why maybe we should be doing it. The real point is for those who are already 100% going, to ksat lavin, to understand why they're going and give them some, understanding why they're going and an inhibition and deeper meaning. Okay, so Chelek Rishon, first part, Hatzavat Matot, putting on or explaining what our aims for going are. When we go out on a way, on a derech, like we're hiking somewhere, on a journey, we need to know where our destination is. So that's what it means, Hatzavat Matarot. What's our destination in this context? When one drafts, like with any other mitzvah, we need to think where our destination is, where our target is. Okay, what are we trying to target? But just like when we are navigating, meaning not with Waze or Google Maps, but with true navigating with a map, first of all, you mark on the map where your destination is, where your target is. And there, if I know where I am on the map here, and I know I need to get over here, then there are mountains on the map, I then have to plan my journey. But you don't plan the journey before you know where you're going to trying to get to. So to here, we're about to start a journey going to the army. With any mitzvah, I need to understand what my target is. What am I trying to get to? Right, you put the point on the map, and then you go back to the map and try and join up with where you started. Says Rav Eli Sadan. So too in life. So too in life, you have to set for yourselves targets and destinations. These targets that we have in life, again, he's going to point it towards the army, but in general, we have targets. We then need to journey and make these things the guiding light of the way we're going. Ledati, says Rav Eli Sadan, according to my opinion, says Rav Eli Sadan, in my opinion, 3 targets need to be placed in one's mind, before one's eyes, during their army service. All the more so before the army service, to prepare themselves for that, right? All these 3 targets require a special effort, chashiva miyuchedet, a unique thought process, v'degeshim miyuchadim, and special emphases. And anyway, in any case, you have to set these targets. Says Rav Eli Sadan, there are 3 targets we need to think about when we're going to the army. They're very, very important, but the order is also important, and no less important is the order than the actual targets. If you mess up the order, that can also cause you to go astray. As I will detail. So he actually, if you just see here, he emphasizes the Mata Arishona, and then he doesn't speak for another, the second and third, until the 29th and 35th page. I'm going to do a small favor and mention all three of them now, just so we have them in our mind. But he says he's ordering them in order of importance. The importance is to start with 1, then 2, and then 3. If you mess up the order, then it can really be damaging, and not as helpful as it should be. It can actually damage. Hamata Rishona, the first target. Anachu mitkaisim letzava. We're going to the army for what reason? Kodem kol k'dei liot ovdei Hashem v'Yisrael amo. We're going to the army to serve God and Am Yisrael, His nation. B'ma she'anu shutafim b'achayut le'bitachon b'nei Yisrael. How are we serving God and Am Yisrael, His nation? By what? Being partners in the responsibility for defending Medinat Yisrael. That's why we're going. That's number 1. Understanding that we are actually serving God by doing this. It's not so we can be Rambo. It's not so we can answer a calling, a bloodthirsty calling. No, that's not the reason. We're not trying to be alpha males here. We might end up being those things, but that's not the reason we're going. We're going to, we end up being bloodthirsty. That's not what I meant, but right, we're trying to do what? Be of the Hashem. Now, on page 29, he mentions the second reason. The second reason is lishmor al or aim or target we need to think about when we're going to the army. Lishmor al tarat halev, to keep the purity of heart. Akdushat hachaim v'alki mitzvot gam b'tnaim hakashim shel hatzava. Going to the army with pureness of heart and being try and make sure that what? We are guarding Kedushat Chaim, the holiness of life, and keeping the mitzvot whilst we're going to the army. We shouldn't go to the army and lose our religion. Meaning, it's still a mitzvah to go to the army, but if you keep this in mind, that I'm going to the army and not losing my religiosity and actually keeping my purity of heart, obviously it means you have to prepare yourself beforehand and make yourself pure beforehand and strong enough. That means you won't be weakened, right? That's the second thing you need to have in mind. So the first thing you need to have in mind that you're going to be a partner in God, with Am Yisrael and with God to defend Medinat Yisrael. Second was we need to think about the purity of heart and make sure we're keeping the mitzvot. And the third thing is Kiddush Hashem, v'akamat gesher ben datim lechilonim, sanctifying God's name and creating a bridge between the religious and the secular. So I'm going to give this an example. If you put that first, that being the most important, then you're going to possibly turn the army into some melting pot to make sure we mix completely in this and the other, which isn't the first important thing. The important thing is what? To make sure we're defending Am Yisrael. If by mixing all the units, doesn't matter which way, bringing women into units, mixed units and all these different things, because we want to create a bridge between the religious and secular, well, that means you quite possibly or probably aren't defending Am Yisrael on the highest level. The most important thing is defending Am Yisrael, being partners with God and His nation to defend Am Yisrael. The second is purity of heart. If you're mixing the units, also you're weakening the purity of heart. So it's important, the order, and to understand what is the most important. So now we're going to go back to the first thing, right, which is on page 11, which was Hamatar Rishona, Achum mitkaisim letzava, kodem kol k'dei liot ovdei Hashem, to serve God and His nation of Israel. How do you serve God and the nation of Israel? By defending, being partners or being responsible, the bitachon of Medinat Yisrael, the safety or the security of Medinat Yisrael. Unefaret, says Rav Eli Sadan, let me detail. Hashut hu kodem kol mitzvah medoraita mishnei hepetim. Says Rav Eli Sadan, army service is a mitzvah doraita. Right? It's not rabbinic. It's not just a good thing to do. It's doraita, min Torah, mishnei hepetim, from two different ways of looking at it. The first way of looking at things is, he's quoting the Rambam here. The Rambam in Hilchot Melachim details when is it milchamet mitzvah, when you're attacking Amalek, when you're killing the 7 nations, Canaanite nations. Right, that's when it's milchamet mitzvah. He also adds one other condition, which is Ezrat Yisrael miyad sar habalim, saving or helping or aiding Am Yisrael from the hands of our enemies who are coming upon them to attack them. That's the Rambam's definition of milchemet mitzvah, a war of self-defense. HaPoskim danim b'sheila hechan k'tuva mitzvah. The poskim ask a great question. Where's the Torah say this? Does the Torah actually literally call it a mitzvah, or is it just logic? Is it svara? You can't just make up a mitzvah d'oraita. So where's the Rambam getting it? Hem zoi svara pshuta visvarka lamali. Is it just a normal svara, and therefore you don't really need a pasuk? Just like cannibalism, it isn't literally written in the Torah, but it makes perfect sense, and it's a svara. Or is it just logic, or is it learned from a kal v'chomer? Just like you're not supposed to stand over your brother's blood, right? Al tamod adam recha. You see someone getting attacked, you're supposed to get involved and save him. Now, when you're in the army, it's kal v'chomer. We're not just saving one guy; you're saving the whole nation, right? When Syria was more dangerous than it is today. When they were on the border, guarding from Syria, we literally, those 10 soldiers who are in a mutzav kidmi, in a frontline base, they're saving all of Am Yisrael because they're looking upon Syria, making sure they're not advancing. That's a kal v'chomer. If it's mitzvah to save one Jew, kal v'chomer, all the more so, all of Am Yisrael in the land of Israel. So the question is, where does the Rambam get this from? אנחנו מצווים לעשות הכל, לרבות השקעה כל ממוננו וכוחותינו בשביל להציל אפילו אדם אחד בודד שנמצא בסכנת חיים. Says the Rabbi Sadan, in relation to a Jew having the mitzvah to defend another Jew, or a single Jew even, we have the mitzvah to do so. We're supposed to invest all our money, all our koach, all our power, all our strength to save even one man, one woman, one Jew. All the more so if tons of Jews are in danger, or if it's 100 Jews, if it's 1,000 Jews in the kal v'chomer, as we already explained, if it's all of Am Yisrael. Now, it's important to, maybe I didn't explain at the beginning, this is from conversations he had, Sichot, that he gave, or talks he gave. So it was written down word for word. So it's a lot more conversational and less formal. Okay, so that's why this comes across like that, because that's how he's writing, right? Or not how he's writing, how he's speaking, and then they wrote it down. I think we're going to stop here. At the end there, we've clarified that there are 3 things we need to have in mind whilst going to the army, and whilst thinking about those things, it's also important to realize we're now developing the first one, which is we are going to the army to serve God, to defend Am Yisrael and Medina Israel, and that's what we're doing. And the Rambam says in mitzvah d'oraita, because it says 6 words: Ezrat Yisrael miyad sar haba alehem, helping Israel from the hands of our enemies who are coming upon us to attack. So please God, we won't need an army forever, right? One day peace will come. But however, when we do join the army, we have a mitzvah d'oraita of actually, just when we're serving the army, even if you're on a base, in known danger, the army is counting upon you to be there. It's called a sadak, seder kochot. They're counting, they know on this base, which is, let's say, next to Tel Aviv, there are 1,000 soldiers. So they know they can count on these 1,000 soldiers. If anything happens, that they are all organized, right? And the army doesn't need to worry about when they go to defend Chas V'Shalom Otef Aza. They don't need to worry about the base in Tel Aviv because there are 1,000 soldiers there. Because we're all mitaskim, we're all involved in Ezrat Yisrael miyad sar haba'alim, involving ourselves with helping Jews, Am Yisrael, from our enemies who are coming to attack us. Shakach.